So our listeners and audience knows we've talked a lot about the CIA and their dealings around the world, and particularly their involvement on November the 22nd, 1963, in the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy. So we have learned of an individual who claims to have had a role in the assassination. We'll let him explain it further. His role actually purportedly was to stop the assassination, and obviously he wasn't successful. Tosh Plumlee joins us now on The Truth. Good morning and welcome. And he also is bringing his co-author, Ralph Pezzullo, with him. Well, welcome both of you, and thank you for joining us today. Tosh, you have had quite the career spanning decades, and you say you were with the agency, right?
Well, yes, and I want to back up here. Everything that we've put has been documented and vetted by multiple sources, and I've testified to 4 separate Senate and congressional committees over the last 60 years. So with that in mind, we go into why we did the book. Since everything is going about JFK, it's coming down like I was an operative to go in to stop the assassination. That's not really the case. I was a tag-along requested through a friend of mine, Sergio, who was operational, to go see the president that day, and that's what happened. Anyway, that's...
Tosh was what is called for the last 60 years. Tosh is very interesting because people talk about the CIA, and there's sort of the official CIA where there's personnel charts and lines of authority and so on. And Tosh is what is called a cutout. So he is a guy who was employed by the CIA, but not directly. He was employed through cutout companies that were CIA-funded companies.
All right. Well, tell us about the events of November 21st and 22nd.
Well, before we get to that, I think it's important to point out that a couple years later, it was actually the summer of 1958, Tosh was told to go to a training session in a place called Nags Head, North Carolina. It was a very secret. It was run by the ONI, which was the Office of Naval Intelligence at the time. And as Tosh mentioned before, it was run by Sidney Gottlieb, who was the architect of MK Ultra. And the idea of this program, that they brought in 55 young guys like Tosh. The idea of the program was to develop super soldiers, they called them. And these were soldiers who were trained to control their minds and their thinking and to use them in sort of specialized ways. It was at Nags Head, North Carolina, that Tosh met another young recruit from Dallas, from a broken home, and his name was Lee Harvey Oswald.
All right. Well, tell us about November the 22nd. You flew from Tampa to Houston to New Orleans and then Dallas, according to what I understand.
2 days before the assassination, Tosh was in Miami, and he got what is called a bump. So a bump is when somebody from higher up in the intelligence community contacts one of their cutout members, right? So they contacted Tosh in Miami. They drove him up to Lockahachie, which was a secret base in West Palm Beach. And there he was instructed to go to a nearby airport, and he would be given a flight plan. When he got to the airport, there was a Pentagon major who was organizing this flight that was supposed to go to Tampa and pick up. There were some of the operatives were in West Palm Beach already. Most of them were anti-Castro Cubans, some of whom Tosh knew, including his friend Sergio, who had first met in the camp in the Sierra Madre Mountains of Cuba. Sergio was one of the guerrillas who had fought with Cuba, who had fought with Castro, who had turned against Castro because he saw that Castro was becoming a dictator. Anyway, they were given instructions. Tosh was given instructions to fly to Tampa to pick up somebody that they called Colonel Ralston, who Tosh knew to be mobster Johnny Roselli, who had been involved in other operations against Castro in Cuba. He then flew to New Orleans, where he picked up E. Howard Hunt, and this group flew to Dallas and arrived the morning of the 22nd. A lot of them split up and they took off, and Tosh was left at a CIA safe house there. And Sergio came up to him and said, "Hey, do you want to come with me? I'm going to see the president in Dealey Plaza." And Tosh said, "Sure, I don't want to sit here. I'm happy to go see the president." In the car to Dealey Plaza, Sergio explained to Tosh that they were part of an abort team, that there would be several teams deployed around Dealey Plaza, and their objective was to disrupt with the shooters, right? That they thought that there would be a triangulation shooting of President Kennedy in Dealey Plaza. They had intelligence to that effect. And the point of the abort team was to abort the assassination, and to do that by just disrupting the timing of the shooters, right? The area that they were supposed to control was the South Knoll, which is across from the grassy knoll. Tosh, you want to take over?
Well, we're crowding a lot of stuff in here. This is extremely difficult to get down in proper context the way it happened. Go back. When we landed, first off, we had bad weather getting into, and we went to Garland instead of Redbird, hung out in Garland until the weather cleared, and then jumped over 10, 15-minute flight to Redbird Airport. While at Redbird, I was going to stay at the country club there across the street or across the highway from Redbird while they went and did their mission. Their mission was triangulation shooting. That was Sergio's mission. Didn't find that out until I was just a co-pilot on that flight from Miami to Dallas at that point in time. Then I'm over sitting at the deal. Sergio says, "You want to go down and see the president?" That was my operational status. What I wanted to clear up here, I was not operational on the team that was actually in Dallas. I went as a tag along with a friend of mine from Cuban days. He invited me to go see the president. His job was on the South Knoll, working with another team on the North Knoll to try to interrupt the timing of information they had received from the Pentagon through another Army private in France that the president was going to be hit in Dallas on the 28th. That was the information. That was the information that the Pentagon had. The Pentagon immediately, through military intelligence, formed a secret team. They notified CIA. CIA didn't know this. CIA acted as a logistical support for the team that flew to Dallas. Rojas was a Cuban pilot that worked for Regina Air Cargo. I worked for Riddle Airlines. We talk about bumps. You get a bump, if someone bumps you, they say, "Go to this airport, tail number so-and-so as such. Your flight logs and your manifest will be inside that aircraft, then you will go." My job was to go to the airport and get ready for the flight with these guys to take them to the mission. So I didn't even know what the hell their job was.
What kind of aircraft were you flying?
DC-3. And we flew from Lantana, which is north or south of Loxahatchee. And we flew over to Tampa and picked up a friend of mine, Johnny Roselli, these are FBI documents, by the way, had flown all over the country prior to that. John Martino was also a friend of mine, and that's how we used to get paid. We didn't get paid with chips. I worked for not Air America, but I worked for Mountain States Aviation, Intermountain Aviation, all turned out to be CIA front companies in the 70s. So, and the records of the FBI document shows fuel receipts, signed off receipts, testified to 3 committees. They've got all the records. So this is not just a new story coming out. This story was available in 64, 65, 68, 71, and 79 with Jim Mars, Bernard Fensterwald Jr., and a lot of other people. So it all goes back, just like I've said, and Ralph knows this. We could do 1,500 pages about these ops. There was more than just one ops going on. We could do 3 pages about JFK, and the only interest would be those 3 pages. So,
well, why was the abort team unsuccessful in disrupting the assassination? What went wrong?
Well, when we got there, number one, the Motorola's that we had, the crystals had been changed. Number 2, we could not communicate with the north side. There was 2 teams sent. There was one team out of Dallas through the 49th Armored Division on the north side. Their job was, one of them was, there's a Gator was over on the other side. That was one of the guys on the plane. He was over there to make contact with the north side. Their job was to get next to them, interrupt their timing. Now, researchers over the years have said, oh, there's going to be a shootout. Plumlee said there was going to be a shootout. No, they're supposed to stop to them, get them, stop the triangulation, and interrupt the timing until the motorcade could get out of the danger area. That was the scope. That was what it was supposed to be. When we got there, Sergio, one of the guys is making this to Sergio, and Sergio saying he can't communicate. Sergio's got a radio that had been given to him through other means at that time to be able to communicate. This was an abort team. I don't like the term abort because abort means stop something that we started.
Tosh, let me ask you, you were a CIA cutout, according to what you've told us. Where did you get your money from? How did they pay you?
Okay, I'll tell you that. You know John Martino? John Martino run all the casinos in Havana. He was a mob-connected guy. I was an associate of John Martino, as the record states. Everything we're talking about is documented. Okay, how we got paid. John Martino used to give us poker chips, and we cashed them in. We never got a check. We did not get a check from, I worked for Mountain States Aviation. I worked for, which later became Evergreen. I worked for Riddle Airlines. I worked for LB Smith. In the 70s, every one of those companies turned out to be CIA front companies. That's documented. We got our money. We didn't get checks.
Okay, so
we didn't have records. We got poker chips.
Do you think that the CIA is continuing to act in similar ways today?
There's elements within the CIA that are as crooked as today as they were then. That's the reason for this book, clearing up loose ends. Buy the book, read the book. We'll answer your questions anytime you want. I was not going to write this book. I had been warned, let sleeping dogs lie because they might jump up and bite you.
Have you been growled at or bit?
Oh, hell yes, I've been growled at. I'm always been growled at.
Well, in connection with this book.
Huh?
In connection with your book.
I was told simply this, Tosh, it would be better if you drop this again. Because let sleeping dogs lie because they might jump up and bite you.
In conclusion, who did pull the trigger? Who killed Kennedy?
Well, the 2 guys that they picked up on the south, that they picked up on the other side, who were then shot. One of them was a Cuban, and the other one was a Frenchman. That's all we know. We don't know their identities, but they were buried, as Tosh said. They were buried at the ball field at Burning Field.
There was only 2 of them. There were more there in that plaza that day.
Yeah, there were more. 2 of them were picked up and killed.
Right.
All right. Well, you heard it here, folks. Tosh Plumlee, an eyewitness to the assassination of President Kennedy, and Ralph Pezzullo, his co-author. Thank you for coming on The Truth and sharing your stories with us today.
Thank you, John. Our pleasure.